Welcome back, everyone. We had a little bit of technical difficulties due to some weather conditions, so we will now you get two parts of this interview. So we are going to continue on and hope that we do not have any more problems. You got to love the summer, right? So one thing that I noticed when I unpacked my package that I was very excited to get that contained Winter Lost. Spoilers, I forgot to mention that. We will have a few questions about Winter Lost. So if there's anyone watching this who has not yet seen it, or read it rather, you may oh, there it is. Beautiful copy. Yes. And it is a beautiful book. It definitely is a beautiful. I mean, all the covers are always gorgeous, but this particular one I thought was particularly lovely. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed when I unpacked it, well, the first thought was, oh, good, my book is here. But then my second thought was, wow, this one seems considerably longer than most of these are in the series. And so what my question for you is that did it surprise you as you were writing the book that it was going to be longer? Or was it something that you kind of knew from the very beginning that this one would end up being longer?
No questions. I have no idea. Most of my books between 95,000 and 110,000 words. And that's because that's just my natural storytelling length. And I assumed this would be like that. But it has to do more about the way I write stories. So when I'm writing a story, I have other stories going along in my head that concern main characters. And sometimes they're short bits and sometimes they're longer bits. And mostly it's to make the characters in the book feel real. If I know the internal logic of why the characters are working the way they are, then readers will feel that too. It's because we're pattern recognition creatures. We're very good humans at seeing things. That's why if you look closely at AI art, you can tell it's AI art. It's also why you can look at the clouds and say, hey, that looks like a lion, because you're recognizing patterns. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not there, right? And to lie well, which is what fiction is doing, I'm lying to you, and I tell you I'm lying to you, and then we both agree to believe it's real. In order to make that work, then all of the characters in the books have to have internal consistency. And the way I do that is I run storylines for them. An example that I've been using is like Adam calls a meeting and all the werewolves have to go to the meeting, and we have one pack member who has to go to the grocery store and now can't go to the grocery store. So he's going to have to eat fast food in the morning, or else, maybe if this meeting ends up short enough, then he can still run to the grocery store. So his motivation throughout this whole scene is going to be, I want this meeting to end soon. And he does and everything he says. And I, as a writer, don't have to tell you, the reader, that that's what's going on. You'll figure it out, or you'll feel that there's something driving him. And usually it's minor and nobody cares. It makes the world feel more real. So one of the reasons I'm a slow writer is that I have all these storylines in my head for all the other characters. Well, when I finished Winter Lost, because of the kind of story it is, it's a story about where Mercy finds out exactly how much Adam really loves her. He's a creature of duty. He's a black and white person. Things are good or they're bad, and he does his duty. And in this book, very early, so this is kind of a spoiler, he throws off two very important tasks that he has in order to follow Mercy and make sure she's okay. And he does this. And it's important that the readers know that these are really important things. One of them is down in New Mexico with this other part of his company. There's been an incident, and it's important that he go and figure it out because it's something to do with witches. And also in the werewolf pack, at the end of Soul Taken, the Mercy's pack have three very dominant werewolves right underneath Adam. There's Sherwood Post, who has recovered his memories, and he's pretty dominant, more than Adam, in fact. And there's Warren, who, from the very beginning of the series, has really been the second most dominant wolf. in Adam's pack. And now everybody has to quit pretending that that's not so. And then there's Daryl, who has been Adam's second, is ready to be his own alpha, except that the whole pack is set, keeping the Tri-Cities safe, and they can't spare him. And he's alpha enough, he's dominant enough that he won't leave. He's there. So if Adam is not there, we have these other dominant werewolves who are going to get in trouble. So it's important that when Adam abandons these, we all know that those bad things are going to happen, that there are problems with him doing that. And what that meant was, all the way through the book, you're reading it and you can feel the tension of that. And you go, well, what did happen in the Tri-Cities? What did happen in New Mexico? And then there's other things. Because this novel, more than any other of the Mercy or Alpha and Omega novels, it goes back to the way I like to write my traditional fantasy, which is I like to write the small stories in the middle of a gigantic fantasy. So I like to write, say, George Martin wrote this huge fantasy, and I go into the village where everybody goes and has dinner one day, and they go off to adventures, and I write about that village, right? That's the kind of story I like to tell. Yeah. So in this one, there is an awesome cosmic story going on where fate and the world and everything is on edge, and Mercy gets dumped into the end of it. That's the storyline, is she just gets dumped right into the middle of all these things going on. And that felt a little uncomfortable. So that the last third of the book, we have these characters nobody's met before, and don't know anything about, and which works, but it leaves readers feeling unfulfilled. So I talked it over with my editor, Ann Sowards, who is wonderful. And she I'm so lucky to have her, because she said, Patty, I have a little problem with this. And I said, I have a solution. And she didn't even have a chance to tell me what the problem was, because I knew what it was. So I wrote these interludes in between every chapter. And the interludes are things that will answer questions that if you read the whole book without the interludes, you're going to be left with. But if you read the interludes, then those answer all of the questions. And it also gave me a chance to bring Baba Yaga into it again, which was fun. So
yeah, you gotta love Baba Yaga, yeah.
Right. Baba Yaga is awesome, right? So because of the interludes, then you know more about what's going on in the background that Mercy and Adam cannot know. And you get introduced to characters that you would not know very well. So you know who they are when they jump in the end of the story. And it already sets you up with so that they have for a reader, they don't feel so lost. But I think it's important to say, if you find the interludes annoying, you can certainly read the story from beginning to end and leave out all the interludes, and you still have a story. And then I recommend go back and read the interludes, and it will take care of all those nagging, annoying things that are bothering you in the rest of the story. So you can read it either way.
Either way. Well, I read them. When I read it, I read them in the order which they appear, and I found it very satisfying and not. I know some people might think that it's choppy or something for doing that, but it's not at all, because the interludes tend to be very short, but they are enough to give you an idea, as you say, that it makes a little more sense as to who some of these people are when they show up in the longer part of the narrative. So I think you did it. Right. I think it was great. So I'll raise my hand as appreciating that. So
awesome. Well, I had a great time doing it. And a lot of them were bits and pieces I already had. Some of them I write down as I'm writing so that I can get a feel for it going on. So this is the way my brain really works. And if you, right. And I hope you enjoy it. But and the other thing about it too is I really am incapable of writing the same book over and over again. I can't do it. I get bored. They would get awful. And so every book is a little different than the one before. This one is maybe a lot different than the ones before, but I had a good time, and I hope you did too.
Oh, I certainly did. And I'm sure that anyone watching this, also has had a good time with it. So, I mean, aside from the fact that, Mercy gets run through the ringer. And speaking of, she's in Winter Lost, she's actually having to face a lot more of what the results of the Soul Taker did to her. The effects getting worse and everything. And I don't want to spoil absolutely everything, but just a comment that I think that it was very well done. That other people were seeing the results. It wasn't just Adam who's the closest to her. It was
Right.
other people as well, and everybody's most concerned about her. So and I know not. Let's just say that we hope that for Mercy's sake, I hope that at least some of this has been resolved, and we will we'll leave it at that. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Now, but one of the other questions about Winter Lost in particular is that we do meet some new characters in the book. And is there a chance that we may see any of them again?
Well, there always is. As you can tell in this book, two of the characters are characters that I wrote in a short story called Gray. Let's see, I think it was Home Improvement Undead Edition was the original anthology that came in, but it's in Shifting Shadows. But I wrote it, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. And I have not used those characters all the way through up till here. But they're kind of so one of them is a vampire who was created in the 1930s in Chicago, and there's parts of this story at Winter Lost, the hot spring lodge that they get stuck in is decorated in Art Deco and 1930s kind of style. And so it just seemed to me to require me to put my 1930s characters into this. The short story Gray takes place in modern, but a lot of the events in it were back from the 1930s. So I brought those characters in. So that's 15 years between the first time you saw him and the last time you saw him. And so I suspect that most of these characters, if not all of them, have a pretty good chance of showing up. In the world that is slightly more real to me than the one I live in the world in my head, all of these characters go off and they have their own stories. And when their stories intersect Mercy or Alpha and Omega, I bring them back in. Or if I have a short story I want to do for them, I bring them back in. So yeah, I think that all of we writers are slightly mental. It's one of the very right. What is it? Multiple personality disorder it is a bonus rather than a problem for most writers. So
right, exactly.
right?
Yeah, gives you a chance to explore something. Yes,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
and
so yeah.
that. Go ahead.
And I'd like to bring Hrimner back. I like my frost giant friends. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, it was, it's been a long time since, or several years anyway, since I read that story. So now I'll have to go back and read Gray so that I can say, oh yeah, I saw you later on down the road. So that's great.
Right.
I did not catch that at the time of reading Winter Lost, just because it has been a long enough time there since. Since
so it's an Easter egg. It's an Easter egg for those of you who track the minutia of my short stories. But I do every year have somebody write to me and ask me if I'm going to use her or Jack in a story. So they had to come back.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Now, this is the end of our spoiler session. I mean, and where my questions are all specific to Winter Lost, so people can unplug their ears again or not fast forward anymore. So, what my question for you is then is that, do you have any favorite secondary or recurring characters to write in either of your series?
Well, they're all my favorite. A seal. Always, because I can throw him into any place and he causes chaos wherever he goes. And he's just a fun character because their arrogance is not a characteristic that most people cultivate. And he is absolutely arrogant. And then he backs it up. He is absolutely as beautiful and as good as he is. But walking into a modern group of people, he throws everybody sideways, which is fun as a writer to do. So Aseel is good. I love Mercy. She's such a fun character to write. And Charles, and Anna is not so much fun, but she and I have come to an agreement over the years so that she behaves herself and I behave myself, and we do okay together. Bran is fun. But I just, if the characters I'm writing in the scene I'm writing are not fun, I take them out, shake them up, and see who else I can throw in there. Ben, my foul-mouthed British miscreant, has been always a fun person to throw in. So
yes, he's quite a character. Yeah, I bet there's someone somewhere who's keeping a list of all of his British swear words or slang. That
well, and I'm using more of them as I'm finding British swear words that Americans would not know. So it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like I'm cluttering up the books of swear word. I love it when I have editorial comments, not Ann Sowards, but other editors have come in and said, "Is this a swear word?" I have to go, "Yes, this is a swear word." That one of my wonderful British fans has given me. They send me lists. It's nice. So.
Oh yeah. Here, use this one in this context. That would be
right. I think Cockwomble is the latest one. So we'll see if that shows up.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching John Oliver's Last Week Tonight. He had a list of them, but this was in a recent episode, but I digress.
Yeah.
And he said only one of them is made up. He had a list of about 8 or 10. So that was amusing, since we at the time had not been back from Britain very long. And I was trying to look at the list and say, I wonder which one was made up, but whatever. Now, in addition to your characters that we all know and love, who have been your favorite antagonists to write? Not necessarily villains, but the antagonists.
Right. My favorite antagonist of all time is Wolf, because he's such a plastic character. He can be on your side and he's not really on your side, or sometimes he's not on your side, but he really is. Like in I was going to do that one and I just lost it. Frostburned, where you think he's on one side and he's actually on the other, and he's just such an odd character. And when I throw him in a scene, I never know what he's going to say or what he's going to do. And that, for me as a writer, that makes it fun, and it makes the story not predictable. And all of those are good things. I am really bored by two-dimensional villains. Bannerata is fun because he's bored. Well, he is bored. And so he has picked up on this game he's playing with Mercy. But he's bored in the way a cat playing with a mouse gets bored, right? So as long as she's interesting enough, he'll let her live and flutter around. And whenever he gets bored of that game, then he'll go out to take them out, which is something she doesn't know. So we'll see how that goes. But Wolf is, because he's such a dynamic and odd character and scary, I love him. He's fun to write.
Yes. Well, and you said that you never know for sure how he's going to behave in any given situation when you put him in a story. And that's for the same for us as a reader. You never know, what.
Right. Good.
So it comes off perfectly that way, I think. Now, from your perspective, what or who was the most dangerous creature that Mercy ever faced so far?
Oh. Well, she faced a volcano god, and he didn't destroy her, but he could have. She faced down the Soul Taker. I think that I think that I think that maybe I have to go back to wolf. We're talking dangerous. We're not talking, all powerful. Because if you're talking all powerful, then a volcano god beats her, Hrimner beats that. And Hrimner is oddly, there's no real villain. Maybe Ymir. There's no real villain in Winter Lost. So Hrimner might be. But, Mercy is used to waltzing with elephants. Not very many people are less powerful than she is. So it doesn't matter if they're that much more powerful, 10 times more powerful or 100 times more powerful. Well, no. So I don't know. That's a good question. And my answer is I could speculate, but I really don't know. We'll find out. The one that kills her.
Okay. Right. Maybe we haven't met them yet, but we don't want that to happen. So
Right. Yeah.
Now, when you take into account your two series that you have going on right now, you've got Mercy, which is told from in first person. We do have parts of the more recent books in the series that are told from someone else's perspective, but not in first person. Right. So we're still getting, that first person Mercy. But in Alpha and Omega, you have, it kind of alternates between both characters that, which makes sense given the actual title of the series, that it would be, that one feels as though it has two protagonists as opposed to just the one main one in Mercy. And there's a considerable difference in tone, I think, at least to me, between the two series. And I'm sure that all of that was done on purpose for you. But I believe we have touched on this before at some point in some conversation, but I'm guessing that you don't write these two series at the same time. I mean, you would finish one book before beginning another. Is that correct? I mean, I would imagine it would be kind of hard to get in that headspace to do these differences.
I have so many storylines running through my head when I write a single book. If I were writing two books, you could probably lock me up in the rubber room and throw away the key. No, I have to finish one book before I start another. I'm not one of those people who can write several different books at the same time. I did, all of those differences, you're right, between the two series are on purpose. I don't know that I knew that I'd be writing them this long. I mean, Mercy is, I think, 18 years old. That's when I think that's how long I've been writing these books, is in that kind of age. So in order to protect myself from writing the same book for 18 years, I deliberately set up both series to be a little bit different. I think initially when I wrote the Alpha and Omega, I set it up, I was going to do it more like a paranormal romance, and that he's, the two viewpoints, the male protagonist and the female protagonist viewpoints, is something that's very common in romance. That's a standard style of writing. But it didn't turn out quite that way. There are certainly romantic elements, but I don't think either one of my series you could call paranormal romance. They are absolutely urban fantasy. The stories turn on the magic and not on the romance and not the relationships of the people. But that being said, yeah, the tones are different. The kind of story I can tell is different. The world building is a little different for both books, just because of the Maroc and thus Charles operate on more of a high level stories, like what's going on in the political world, that kind of stuff. And for Mercy and Adam, for most of the series, it's been smaller. It's been set in the Tri-Cities, and then that's kind of reversing itself right now. I talk like I have no power in this, but sometimes I feel like that. So because the world that I write in is just a little bit more real to me than the world I live in, and there's only so much control I can exert over it.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, we're just grateful. I mean, I feel sorry that they're bossy and take over. I'm sorry for that, but as your readers, we can appreciate that they take over and pull things off the way they do anyway.
Right, right. If they don't do that, I know that I don't have my teeth in the story correctly. If they're not taking off with things, then I know that there's a problem.
So yeah, if that's your process and that's what you've come to expect, you would know when something changed and you might get alarmed, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, like this is not fair. This is not right.
I once wrote an outline for Ann Sowards that outlined what the story was in the very last line of it. And if this is still, I wrote what the end of the book, and if the book actually ends this way, you and I both know this will be a terrible book. So,
and Anne knows you, so she probably just nods and agrees. Yes,
we've been working together since When Demons Walk, so that's
wow.
Yeah, that's right. Right?
Long time, yeah. Now, for you, what would you say between the characters of Mercy and Anna? What would you say are their biggest differences in personality, and in which ways are they most alike?
Anna is she's way more powerful than Mercy is. She's a werewolf. She can take a lot more damage. So she doesn't have to think things through quite so hard as Mercy does. She's also softer, probably for the same reason. Mercy raised herself from the age of about 14 on. She kind of raised herself. And then every adult that she had a good relationship with until she was in college abandoned her in some ways, right? So she's a lot less trusting. Anna is pretty trusting. Mercy is a lot less trusting. I mean, they both had terrible things happen to them, but Anna's childhood is pretty trauma-free. I mean, as trauma-free as most people's childhood are. She had a really strong family unit that's still together. She still talks regularly to her brother and her father and all of those things. Whereas Mercy is wary with all of the people in her life that would have had power over her. So her mother, she loves them dearly, but she has a really kind of strained relationship with them. And it makes her a little bit less trusting. She and Adam have been together a lot longer than Anna and Charles have been, but Anna and Charles' relationship, I think, is more solid than Mercy still finds places to fight. And Adam is learning how to work with that. But those are the kinds of differences that they have. Anna is got a lot more maybe quiet confidence that Mercy does at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, or is there anything about them that you think things that they have in common?
Well, sure. They're really involved in their families, which are found families in both cases. They're concerned with their packs. They're concerned with they're good people, which means I like to write about heroes. And to me, heroes are incredibly common. They're the kind of people who, go to work every day and work jobs that they don't like in order to support their family. There are people who do the hard thing and then do the right thing instead of the easy, not so good thing. So that's something they both have in common.